Hey.
Sweet. How's it going?
I'm Justine.
I'm Gray. And this is Unknowable, the podcast where we talk about all things mysterious, unusual, or unknowable.
This is our place to talk about all weird things that we are into anyways and talk about all the time. And now we're going to share it with you. It's going to be ghosts and unsolved murders,
Cryptids,
missing persons,
conspiracy theories,
aliens,
all of that.
demons,
Any of that.
any of that. It's going to be awesome. And this week, Mothman.
Talking about the Mothman.
It's probably our most talked about thing.
By far.
By far, we annoy most people in our lives talking about Mothman anyways. So we thought, why not start off talking about Mothman?
Right. The thing that's really interesting about Mothman is it's not easily put... He is not easily put in a box.
Yeah.
It's not just a cryptid. He's not just like an alien. There's UFOs. There's Men in Black.
Yeah.
There's weird paranormal things. There's premonitions. There's mind reading. There's It's got everything.
It's got everything.
It's not just in this little box.
Right.
Which
Is he something like Bigfoot where he's an unknown...
Interdimensional being.
Exactly. Yeah. Is he some unknown species of animal?
Right. Some mutated
Is
bird.
he a UFO?
Right.
Or, wow, an alien? Is he a UFO?
An alien from a UFO.
That's like that Mulder meme where he's looking at the cat and asks, are you a
you a
UFO?
UFO?
Yeah. Is he a UFO?
We just saw that episode the other day.
Did you really?
Yeah.
That's a good episode.
Small world.
Yeah. Wow, you guys are still really early on in X-Files.
I know.
Wow. Yeah, no, he has everything. He is everything. I actually have a note in here that I wasn't sure whether to call it or he, so I'm glad that you just went for it.
I thought it was presumptuous to call him Mothman.
Right.
He could... They are... If they're an interdimensional being,
Right.
I highly doubt that there's the concept of gender where they
True.
come from, or maybe there is, and it's just not one of the two genders that... I mean, who knows?
Mothman's
So I
beyond
think
that.
Mothman is beyond that.
Yeah.
So we're going to continue to call him Mothman, I'm sure, and refer to him as a him,
Sure.
but...
We're going to Mr. Mothman.
Mr. Mothman.
Sir.
Oh,
Yeah. That makes you
super
uncomfortable.
weird.
So weird. So
Yeah.
let's talk about what Mothman looks like.
Okay.
Should we jump in with that?
I think so.
Okay.
You can
So-
picture it in your head.
You can picture it in your head. Okay, so Mothman is said to stand on 2 feet.
Yep.
He's bipedal.
Right.
He... Generally, people talk about him having wings,
Yep.
obviously. It's actually kind of funny because he doesn't really resemble a moth all that much.
No.
That was just a name that came from a newspaper, I think, somewhere along the line.
Yeah.
But he doesn't really look like a moth.
No. Not
I
at
guess maybe in the sense that generally people talk about him not having a head.
all. Right.
His
yeah.
eyes are just kind of on his chest, if you will.
There's this one person who saw something back in 1915, and he described it as a headless angel
Oh,
with wings.
that's not cool.
No, which is super weird. So imagine like a dude with no head, so just like sort of like the rounded shoulders,
Yeah.
and then like 2 big glowing red eyes, like where like the pecs would be.
That's
Just
really
like
disturbing.
with big wings.
Yeah, big wings. Yeah, he's said to have owl-like traits, which again is mostly, I think, due to the appearance of no head.
Right.
If you see a silhouette of an owl, it doesn't look like they have a head.
Right.
Yeah.
Is not at all. There's a statue in Point Pleasant of the Mothman.
Yeah.
And looks nothing like
No.
what people describe seeing, because
Not
he's
at
got
all.
this like very like he's got like a beak and like a very defined head.
Yeah.
And like he has like the glowing red eyes and the wings, but like there's just not supposed to be a head. It's just
Right.
supposed to be like this weird kind of like rounded
Yeah.
hump at the top of his body.
Yeah.
With like the big eyes. So it's weird
No.
that they chose that to be the statue.
Yeah, he was sensationalized in an incorrect way.
Yeah.
Which is sad. I would still like to see that statue, though.
Oh, yeah.
In real life. But,
Make a pilgrimage to Point Pleasant, West
yeah.
Virginia.
Yeah. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
We could do that. It's a road trip.
Yeah, why
It'd
not?
be amazing. Yeah, he's reported to be about 7 feet tall. So, kind of terrifyingly tall.
Yes.
At least for what he is.
Right. Imagine that flying through the air
Right.
with glowing red eyes.
With a wingspan of about 10 to 15 feet or more.
Jesus.
There was one sighting somewhere where they described it as having wings the size of a Buick.
Oh,
So,
that's horrifying.
it's horrible.
Yeah.
Plus the ability to fly up to 100 miles per hour.
Yeah.
So,
right. Oh,
there's
yeah,
been-
that person was being
yeah.
chased. And
Yeah. Chased in their car.
That's insane.
Racing away from him, and supposedly he stayed right up with the car.
But he can still take off vertically.
Right.
Very, like, gracefully, like a
Like a helicopter.
Like a helicopter.
Yeah.
But when he like walks, he's very like awkward and lumbering.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't quite know what he's doing, but once he gets into the air, he like knows what he's doing.
Yeah. One of the things that I read described him as shuffling like a penguin.
Yeah, like a penguin.
Which I think I made a note of that in here because I was like, that makes him sound kind of sad.
Yeah.
And not very scary.
That's the thing about Mothman, okay? So like if you take all of like the characteristics of him and you describe him, he sounds like a terrifying creature.
Yeah.
But by and large, when people describe him, they're not like they're terrified by seeing the 7-foot creature flying at them with red eyes.
With huge
but
wings.
like the interaction that they describe isn't like he's trying to hurt them.
Right.
People describe him as like trying to communicate.
Yeah.
Like he's just trying to like communicate something with them and like may not have the capacity of language or like the ability to like communicate with us the way that we're used to, so we find it frightening, but he's just like trying to say something to us.
Right.
Which we're going to get into more about what he might be trying to communicate.
What he may be trying to communicate, which is not anything good, but maybe not anything he's causing.
Right. So he could just be trying to help us out, or he
could be.
Maybe he just wants us to know that he's the one who's going to be doing the shit.
He just wants some credit.
Right.
He's like, this terrible thing's going to happen, and it was me.
It was me.
Just so you know. So yeah, it's interesting that he doesn't really seem to be doing it. He's never, as far as I know, proven to have harmed anybody.
Right.
There's never been like an instance where somebody's been attacked by him.
Right. Well,
despite the fact that he could.
There's that dog.
The dog.
Missing.
Yeah, there was the dog.
Which is super sad.
It's really sad.
But there is a potential that he didn't actually do anything to the dog. The dog could have been lost in the woods. And
that's true. Maybe
else could have
Mothman just
happened.
needs to eat.
Right, and that's the thing too. Like maybe he's like if he is some sort of weird cryptid and not this interdimensional being, he's gonna need to eat.
Yeah.
He's gonna need to like eat something. And what is this giant 7-foot creature gonna need to eat? It's probably gonna be a carnivore, and it's probably gonna be dogs or deer. Or
thankfully, just not humans.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing. He's had the opportunity from the encounters that people have had.
Right.
It seems like he's had a chance to kill people before.
Right.
But he hasn't.
No.
Hasn't even attacked anybody. Hasn't hurt anybody. So maybe he's just, he's trying to warn people. I mean, I always wonder with some interdimensional beings or anything like that, like even if it is just this bizarre species, like people kind of think of Bigfoot, although Bigfoot has some interdimensional qualities potentially too, but the idea that it's maybe a species that just doesn't really exist in large numbers, like you have to wonder how much like maybe they're kind of lost.
Right.
And like bumbling around and just like, what the heck?
What is this like new like technology, and like who knows how long, like if Mothman or moth people are a species, like who knows how long like their lifespan is.
Right.
So like what if they've been around for like 200 years? Because we're gonna get into some like sightings that may or may not be a moth person from like the 1800s and like even earlier. Yeah. So what if it's been the same one and they've witnessed all of this like the technological revolution, and they're just confused, and their habitat's being encroached on, and you know they're just like lost and confused and angry, and we're interpreting that as them being like hostile or whatever, but they're just lost.
Right. I mean,
there's always like a sad quality to Mothman.
He's described as doing a lot of shrieking, screeching. I mean, that could just be, he's just freaked out. I mean, they generally talk about with animals in general, like that most of the time that they will show any kind of hostility is just that they are, they're feeling territorial or scared or threatened. Right. So maybe he has shrieked at people because, I don't know.
Like a dog a dog backed into a corner barking at somebody.
Yeah. Maybe he's just losing his shit. Yeah. And he just doesn't know what to do. So anybody listening to this, if you don't really know much about Mothman, you may have heard of Mothman from the Mothman Prophecies. Yes. The movie starring Richard Gere.
Yep. 2002.
2002. Yep. It's kind of bullshit.
Yeah. It's based on a book by a man named John Keel. It's called The Mothman Prophecies. Yep. Is the book by John Keel. So the movie is loosely based on this book. So John Keel was a famous ufologist who went to Point Pleasant during the Mothman flap. Who was investigating Mothman, did a bunch of first-hand interviews, and wrote sort of the definitive book on Mothman. Very factual. It's actually in the nonfiction section if you go to buy it. Really? So the movie's based on that, but there's a heavy amount of artistic license taken by the director. Disappointing. It's very disappointing. I don't remember too many details. I just remember being angry when I watched it. Yeah. Because I've been into Mothman for a long time. Right. I knew enough about it to know when there were things that were just so wrong. Right. For no reason.
For no reason at all.
Strange factual changes that just didn't contribute anything to like drama or anything. It just
artistic embellishment.
Yeah.
Unnecessary. So, not a fan, but maybe you've seen it if you like Richard Gere, or who knows.
It's definitely worth a watch. It's a good like Halloween movie.
Yeah.
Because it's super creepy and unsettling.
Yeah, it's really creepy. I liked that about it, but I was bummed that just like, why? Just make it accurate.
Right.
Just tell me the things that I know.
Especially like Mothman. It's such like a niche like topic that people who know it well. So why would you change very sort of minor details about it just to irritate the people who are going to be like your core audience, I feel like.
Exactly. I was really excited to watch it.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine like gave me a copy of it and he was like, "Oh, you're going to love this." And then like now I'm just like, "Why? Why'd you do this to me?"
Right.
Why did you give me this?
You ruined the Mothman.
You ruined it. So, we could talk about some sightings.
Let's dive in.
There's been sightings. So, again, if you saw that movie, and if you have done some casual looking into Mothman, you probably, maybe you don't, I don't know, maybe you don't know that much, but you might link him with Point Pleasant, West Virginia.
Yeah.
Which is where as you said, the biggest flap, which is, I don't know if you meant to do that.
Oh, no, that's a real thing.
Okay, no, I know, but like, you know, he's got wings.
Flap. Oh, right. I didn't even get the pun. Wow.
Did not get the pun. I was like, wow, he's just like glossing right over it.
Yeah. Flap. No pun
It was just so
intended.
natural for you.
Well, it's like they use that for UFO sightings or any cluster of sightings that happen. They refer to it as a flap.
It's a flap.
Mothman.
You are a pretty
flapped in.
punny guy, so.
Yeah, that's true. Man, I'm struggling.
Yeah. So Point Pleasant is the place that he kind of hung out for the longest, it seems, maybe. I mean, there were sightings there for over a year.
Yep.
And should we jump into when that started?
Yeah.
All right.
The first sighting is super creepy.
Super creepy. Okay.
He's very drawn to death.
He's drawn to death. Yeah, there were 5 men. So this is November 12th, 1966.
Okay.
There were 5 dudes digging a grave at a cemetery in a town called Clendenin? I don't know.
Close
in
enough.
West Virginia is about 75 miles southeast of Point Pleasant.
Oh, interesting.
They claim to see a man-like figure. One of them described it as a brown human being, which I wasn't really okay with that, but, you know, fly low from the trees over their heads. So this is kind of known as being the first known sighting in Point Pleasant.
Right. Or near Point Pleasant.
Or near Point Pleasant. Right. Yeah. He was just kind of around the area.
Right. Which, it's super weird that, 5 dudes digging a grave. That's a very, unsettling sight. You're already doing something that's kind of an intense thing to be doing, digging a grave.
Yeah.
And then you see this weird, giant, human being thing flying overhead. Yeah.
And I think this one has really, to me, most of them have some credibility, but this is a group of 5 guys. This wasn't one dude who's maybe, tired at the end of his shift and, seeing things. 5 guys.
Right.
All agreed on what they saw. Or maybe didn't agree on what they saw, but they agreed about the details of what the heck.
So that's one of the things is this is pre-Mothman hysteria. Nowadays, if somebody saw anything remotely similar to that, it would immediately be labeled as Mothman.
Yeah.
But this is before any of that. So these dudes saw something flying in the air, human-like with wings.
Yeah.
So they're not part of any sort of mass hysteria. They're not trying to win any sort of attention or anything. They're not going to financially profit off this.
Yeah.
So they have no motive to report this other than that they actually saw something.
Right.
So they definitely saw something.
Yeah.
What it was is up for debate.
Yeah, up for crazy debate.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just seemed that was the first. I mean, really the only place that there was any hysteria was Point Pleasant, really.
Right.
But yeah, this was the first known sighting.
Right.
So it was two couples.
Yeah.
From Point Pleasant, Roger and Linda Scarberry and Steve and Mary Mallet.
Yes, the Scarberry one.
Yep. They were just hanging out at the area in Point Pleasant that kind of was referred to as the Lover's Lane area. Okay. It's kind of unclear what they were doing there. 2 couples together in a car, but just hanging out.
You gotta do what you gotta do.
Having a good time.
And when you're living in a small town.
Yeah, living in a small town in the late 60s. Yeah, they saw a large gray creature whose eyes, quote, glowed red when the car's headlights picked them up. So they were in the car.
Right.
Thankfully, they weren't out and about. But they described it as a large flying man with 10-foot wings.
Jesus.
So they were driving in an area of town. So we'll go into this a little bit more later, but it was the part of town known as the TNT area.
Yes.
So near this old TNT, like World War II munitions
Storage facility.
Yeah.
So it's all these, if you go online and you Google right now, Point Pleasant TNT area, you'll see some really like unsettling photos of kind of like a triangle set into like a hill, like a mounded hill, where they stored TNT bombs, whatever sort of, dangerous explosive materials that they had during World War II.
Yeah.
And is it continued? Is it still being stored in there, or is there just like residue left over?
I think so. I think what I had read about it is that, it's made up of several hundred acres of woods and large concrete domes, which I think in one other thing they describe them as igloos.
Igloos, yeah.
Which for some reason is creepy. That should be a nice word.
Right.
But no, it's just creepy.
Well, when you see the photos, you understand why it's creepy.
Yeah,
because
it's super creepy.
Like the most horrifying igloo you've ever seen.
Exactly. There's a network of tunnels honeycombed throughout the area, which could, if people talk about this Mothman coming from that area, it makes sense that maybe he's not seen all the time because he's chilling in those tunnels.
Right. That could be his home. I heard it described as that was his home, was the TNT area.
The TNT area.
Where he was sighted a lot and where he like came from or returned to after the sighting.
Yeah. It's super creepy.
Right.
And we'll go into one of the theories about Mothman and why that kind of ties in later. But the area is also comprised of the McClintock Wildlife Station, which is super heavily forested. This is like a preserve. There's ponds and ridges and hills and all kinds of,
It is a wild bird sanctuary as well.
Yeah, a wild bird sanctuary. A lot of it is inaccessible, at least, to the average person, unless you're going in there for a reason, but you can't just go hang out in there. In 1979, fishermen in the TNT area reported that chemicals had been left to seep into the ponds.
Interesting.
Not a good thing. And then it was labeled as an environmental disaster.
Yep.
And by 1983, the TNT area was among the country's most polluted sites.
It's wild. See, so you have a wild bird sanctuary next to a heavy source of pollution.
Yeah.
So there could be some explanations for what's happening there.
Right.
We'll get more into that later, but
just
put a little bookmark in that in your brain.
Little bookmark. So, they're hanging out by the TNT area, which again, there apparently was an area near here or next to that area that was this lover's lane.
Right.
And they said they saw him shaped like a man, but bigger, maybe 6 or 7 feet tall, and it had big wings folded against its back. And one of the women said, which I don't know why I think this is so creepy, you could see muscles in its legs.
Yeah. Ugh,
I don't like that.
No.
I don't like that at all.
That's a weird detail to point out too, but like
I hadn't thought of him as being like ripped before, but
he's like a ripped bird man with no head.
With no head.
Giant wings, 7 feet tall.
Yeah, they saw him move towards the TNT plant door, and that's when they sped away. They saw him on a hillside near the road a few minutes later. They saw him spread its wings and rise into the air.
Like a helicopter.
And then, like a helicopter. And then it was traveling along with their car, which at that point was going over 100 miles per hour because they were scared as hell.
So he's capable of hovering over a 100-mile-an-hour car and keeping pace with it very easily.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which maybe speaks to the whole being like super muscular, because that would be like a really intense thing to do for a bird.
Yeah. How do you, I just don't.
I wonder, do birds like routinely, are they able to go 100 miles an hour? Is that like an easy thing?
I feel like that's a thing I should have researched.
Glide, or would he like...
Right.
I don't know.
Well, they said, I mean,
unsettling.
people don't often describe him as even like flapping his wings all that much, which kind of lends a little bit to him maybe not being an animal, at least that we know of, because you'd need to be flapping, I would think, quite a bit to like
especially
be
if
doing
he's
that.
like a 7-foot muscular creature. Like he'd be pretty heavy, a couple hundred pounds.
He's a hugely tall, ripped dude, flying through the air.
Right. So he would need to like continuously be flapping his wings to just stay afloat.
Yeah.
Unless there's some kind of weird, like interdimensional science going on there or something. I don't know.
Some shit we can't explain. Something unknowable.
Something unknowable that we cannot explain.
Oh, I just thought of a really good theory that I'll talk about later.
Okay.
That is the most ridiculous theory I've ever heard. I hope I remember it now.
Okay.
But so they sped the hell out of there. They went straight. I guess they said that he stayed with them until they got to the city limits before he just kind of veered off into the fields. And they went straight to the police department.
Right.
Like, again, this was not people who, and I don't even think, I doubt that even that the first group at the cemetery's sighting was even known. That, as far as I know, that nothing was in the newspaper at that point. They wouldn't have made an article about that, about one technically one sighting.
Right.
So it's not even like this group of couples even knew
Right.
that anything had been seen already.
And again, this is 4 people who
4
were
people.
all agreeing on something that they saw.
Yeah, they all had very similar descriptions. Linda Scarberry had said later that she wished that she had never seen it. She apparently had like some kind of nervous breakdown later on, like was hospitalized at some point because she was losing her damn mind.
Yeah.
So yeah, this was not people that knew anything about Mothman existing. I mean, this wasn't really a thing that was being talked about. So they went right to the police department.
Right.
And this was somebody that, according to the police, were people that were trusted in the community. These were not people that were, I don't even know what makes somebody prone to making that up, but whenever I hear that, particularly from this time period, I feel like it's always police are like, oh, they're good kids. Like, what?
Probably because they were just like, like jocks or whatever. Like,
right. Just normal, whatever.
Going, like they all have like a car and they're going to like Lover's Lane. So they're probably like the popular kids in high school. Like,
I do picture them that way. I picture like the dudes having their varsity jackets.
Yep.
And the girls are wearing them because it's like a little chilly that night. That's like how I've always envisioned that for some reason.
Slicked back hair, like greasers kind of.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then they're just like scared shitless.
When they went to the police department and they reported it, they split the 4 people up into different rooms and interrogated each of them independently.
Yeah.
And they all told the same story with the same details.
Yeah.
And the police officer commented that like there was like real terror in their voices while they were describing this. It wasn't some like prank. It wasn't anything that was like at all like lighthearted. They were like seriously scared and like terrified by this experience.
Yeah. Which I would be too.
Right.
Like that would just be awful. So yeah, that was that same day. This is just a few days after the gentleman in the cemetery, 3 days later. But that same night that those couples saw Mothman, there was Newell Partridge, who was a local building contractor, lived in Salem, which again, about 115 miles northeast of Point Pleasant.
Okay.
He's at home hanging out, watching TV. Screen suddenly goes dark on the TV. He said a weird pattern filled the screen, and then he heard these loud whining sounds from outside that raised in pitch and then stopped. And that's when the TV went out. So he said it sounded like a generator winding up. So he is kind of like, what the hell?
Right.
He hears his dog, Bandit, out on the porch.
Big German Shepherd.
Starting to howl. So he goes outside to check out what Bandit's looking at. The dog is facing the hay barn, which is about 150 yards from the house. So Newell shines his flashlight and sees 2 red circles that looked like eyes or, quote, bicycle reflectors.
Which is super weird.
Yeah, which is often how his eyes are described.
Right, where like they're not, it's not like it's generating, like the glowing red eyes aren't generating their own light.
Yeah.
They're like reflecting light.
Exactly.
Which, could be like the red eye effect when you take a picture, or like the reflection of a light source on an animal's like night vision part of their eyes or whatever. So it kind of lends credence to the fact that it could be some strange cryptid or like something of this world because it has like eyes that behave like other animals' eyes that are real animals. Yeah. So I thought that was an interesting detail.
Yeah.
Bicycle reflector aspect of it.
And that has like bicycle reflectors has been a phrase that was used in like multiple different sightings. Right. Not even just in Point Pleasant, like not that people read it and they repeated it like, oh yeah, that is how it looked, but like people independently were like, looked like big bicycle reflectors, which is still freaky. Oh yeah. Because people have also used that because they said that was a similar size to the eyeball. So when you think about like something's eyes being as big as bicycle reflectors, like
just speaks to how like big they are. Like if you hold a bicycle reflector up to your eye, it's like half your face. Yeah. It's wild.
It's not cool. No. So he saw these creepy bicycle reflectors. He said the moving red orbs were certainly not animals' eyes, he believed. And the thing that I read said that he was very experienced, like, with animals in general. Like, he did a lot of hunting and things like that. So he was just, I don't know, maybe a little bit more knowledge of animals than the average person.
Right. Living in the woods of West Virginia.
Right. And so he was scared, obviously. Bandit, this poor dog, just takes off like a shot across the yard in pursuit of whatever they had just seen. Right. Which, again, like, there was something. And I guess Newell Partridge went inside for his gun, but then he was too scared to go back outside, which made me a little mad when I read it.
I know.
I was like, dude, your dog just
leave
ran
your dog.
off.
I would not.
Yeah.
I would not have
Like,
let my dog go out
not
there.
even like I saw something weird, my dog is tied up, he'll be fine. But like your dog just took off somewhere and
Into
then
the
you're just like,
woods.
you know what? I'm going to stay inside with my gun.
I'm too scared. But my dog, he's
My
got
dog. Yeah. Not cool. Not cool,
Sucks.
man. It says he was an experienced hunting dog, but still.
Still. The dog was never seen again.
Yeah. Not okay, Newell.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, he slept with his gun next to his bed, and then Bandit was gone. The dog was still missing 2 days later when Partridge read about the sightings in the newspaper, which again, couldn't have known those couples saw the same thing that night because
at this point,
at that point they were probably at the police station talking to the police, and then Mothman's over here 100 plus miles away from where he had just been.
Well, if he can fly 100 miles an hour, it just takes an hour.
Fine, he's good. So, yeah, and actually, interestingly enough, one of the couples, Roger Scarberry, said that as they entered the city limits of Point Pleasant, they had seen the body of a large dog lying on the side of the road.
Oh yes.
When they were coming back, I think, from the police station. Because they left Point Pleasant and then went to the police, talked about it, and then they were coming back and they saw the dog. And I guess they even said that they, like, the next day went back to go find the dog because they, like, remembered. I mean, they were still freaked out that night, so they went back and the body was gone.
Right.
So
if Mothman did kill this dog, it's either self-defense, like maybe the dog caught up to him or something, or he needed to feed.
Yeah.
And, a dog is a convenient source of food, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, it does seem like it wasn't...
It's like the only death that I
fun.
can think of that was attributed to Mothman.
Right, exactly.
Like, it directly attributed to where he was the one that killed something.
Yeah, likely to be the one.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, he could have gone and killed Newell. Again, if he can fly that fast, if he's this 7-foot-tall creature, I mean, he could have busted in that door if he was just killing for fun.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah, it seems like either that dog got him or he was just like, cool.
Convenient source of food.
Here's a meal. This is great. Because who knows what Mothman's eating out there? I don't know.
Poor dog.
I don't know what he's up to.
Right.
So, yeah. Point Pleasant, man. So do you want to talk about maybe some of the other odd sightings in Point Pleasant that were not Mothman, but that were happening at the same time?
Yes. So, as I was saying, there is a lot of complexity with the Mothman sightings. It's not just like this cryptid Mothman flying around that people see.
Yeah. At
this time in Point Pleasant, there was a ton of UFO sightings as well.
Yep.
Like in 1967, there were yellow, green, orange, and white lights that were seen in the air in conjunction with these like dark black triangles that were flying around, very low, slow moving, with like a single beam coming off of the triangle that was almost like it was searching for something.
It was searching for something.
So that's a weird little aspect of it.
That's creepy as hell.
I have a theory that ties that into it eventually, but we'll get there.
We're going to get there.
So I think maybe one of the most like compelling like side sort of creatures in this whole story for me is this person named Indrid Cold.
Yes. The coolest name ever.
Super cool.
Super cool.
Creepy.
My kid will be named Indrid Cold.
Indrid Cold.
Just kidding, but that would be cool. Amazing.
So.
Yes. Tell us about Indrid Cold.
There's this man. His name is Woodrow Derenberger. He was a salesman. He was like a door-to-door vacuum salesman, living in Point Pleasant at the time. Just this, good old West Virginia dude.
Yeah.
Nothing remarkable. Didn't seem like he wanted any sort of like fanfare or anything.
Right.
He's driving along this, deserted road in the middle of the night, and all of a sudden this UFO comes down and like kind of buzzes his car, like flies close to it.
Yeah.
He described it as a flying kerosene lamp. So picture almost like a cone with like a rounded bottom.
Yeah.
Almost like a top, I guess. So it's flying along and it ends up landing in front of him and causing his car to stop. So it lands in front of him. The door opens of the flying saucer or the flying kerosene lamp.
Whatever it is.
And a weird detail that he was very like, insistent upon putting in there is that when the door opened, there was like a loud clunk, like it like
Weird.
An old heavy car door, like creaking open and like clunking open.
Whoa.
So it's like there's this weird, like you always think of UFOs as being these like really like fancy pieces of technology where it would just like glide open by itself. But yeah, it's not very futuristic. It's almost like like antiquated, like this heavy door that clunks open. They don't have WD-40 in this other dimension or whatever.
No, they haven't gotten there yet.
No, they haven't got there.
They're fine.
So the door opens and out walks a man.
A man.
Unnaturally tall, wearing a black suit.
Yep.
And just grinning.
Ugh.
Which is the super creepy part of it.
Why the
Described
grinning?
as grinning,
Dude.
right. He was 6 feet tall, about 35 years old, olive complexion, dark brown hair, and he was wearing a dark, glossy, metallic blue suit.
Weird.
Which he went into a lot of detail about it. It was almost like it was like flexible metal that the suit was made out of, or it had like pieces of metal integrated into the fabric, like almost like
bizarre.
woven metal.
So bizarre.
Which is a super weird detail. So this man walks up to Woody Derenberger, who's sitting in his car still,
Woody. Good old Woody.
and he rolls his window down to talk to the guy. And
Like you do.
as you would,
When,
like,
like when a guy with a metal suit comes out of a kerosene heater or lamp or whatever.
flying UFO.
You're just like,
kerosene lamp.
yo, what can I do for you?
Right.
Yeah.
He rolls down his window to talk to him, but that was unnecessary because the man then proceeded to communicate with Woody telepathically.
Yes.
He was speaking
Love it.
to Woody without moving his lips. It was just in his
Amazing.
head.
Amazing. Which is a common thing said with aliens in general.
Really?
People talk about being abducted
Oh,
and that they
right.
were, they're laying there and that they were being talked to by the creatures or the aliens, but none of them were opening their mouths.
Right. And you don't need to talk.
Right.
You can just think it, and the being that you're talking to understands what you're saying.
Just knows.
Right.
Ugh.
And I think Indrid Cold actually said specifically 3 or 4 times, like, you can either like talk normally or you can just think it and I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
So it's weird that he like that Indrid Cold repeated that to Woody, like,
Right.
dude, like, you don't need to talk if you don't want to, but like you can if you want to.
You
Like,
can.
I understand that, like, this
If you
is a
feel
weird thing
comfortable
for
with
him. The whole time Indrid Cold has this fixed smile on his face,
Dude, like learn some social cues, man.
right?
You're so futuristic. You don't know it's creepy to just smile at somebody for no reason.
This might be his first experience with a human being.
It could be.
You don't know.
And so he told the guy that that was his name.
So yeah, so Indrid Cold communicates and says, what is your name, or what are you called, is what he says to Woody Derenberger, and Woody knows that he's asking what his name was, so Woody says, my name's Woody Derenberger.
Yeah.
And Indrid Cold says, I'm called Indrid Cold, or my name's Cold, and then like Indrid Cold.
Oh
Like
no.
all James Bond style.
Why is that worse?
Right. So Woody says he was very frightened, and he was frightened that this was all happening in his head, like that there were
Yeah.
no words being spoken, that like he was being communicated with telepathically.
Yeah.
Which, like, that's a very natural, like, I would be scared.
Yeah.
I've never communicated with somebody telepathically. and
No.
if all of a sudden you're just some vacuum cleaner salesman living in like the,
Yeah.
West Virginia, just living your life, and then all of a sudden you're being communicated to telepathically
Yeah.
by a 6 foot tall grinning man wearing a shiny metallic blue suit.
Yeah.
That's like a very like 0 to 100.
Yeah.
In like the space of, well, I don't know, 20
Right.
minutes.
He's probably having he had a long day. Maybe didn't have great sales that day.
Right.
He's going home just like, this sucks. I'm gonna go have a beer, and then all of a sudden Indrid Cold comes out of this kerosene lamp, and you're just like, all right,
Yeah, this
this is my life right now.
is normal.
It's great.
Indrid Cold asked what that was, and he was pointing to a city that was kind of down the road that Woody was driving towards.
Oh.
And Woody told him the name of the city. So he was almost like trying to find where he was. It was almost like he just landed and was trying to figure out, like, where am I? Who are you? What is this?
Holy crap.
And the conversation lasted for about 10 minutes.
Wow.
One of the creepiest little aspects of this conversation
Yeah.
was that Cold said to Woody, we eat, we breathe, we sleep, we bleed even as you do.
What the hell?
Like, what is okay that there's a we there?
Yeah,
so he's
we.
one of multiple people.
Ugh.
And if they, they eat, sleep, breathe, that means that they're of this dimension, or that
Yeah.
they are like animals of some kind.
Right.
Because unless, eating, sleeping, and breathing is something that is universal, that happens, in all galaxies and all
Right.
dimensions. I mean, who knows?
Oh my god.
But, yeah, and Woody would then have a few more experiences with Indrid Cold over the course of, a couple years.
Whoa.
There was a huge media storm. Representatives of the Air Force contacted him. He had a whole write-up in the newspaper.
Holy crap.
He had a really famous interview that he gave describing it, which you can look up and you can find video of, which is really interesting to hear him tell the story, because it gives you a sense of who Woody Derenberger was. Because I think my initial impression was that someone who came forward and like had this story might be like looking for attention or looking for some sort of like way to financially profit off this and like, you know, leverage the whole Mothman hysteria to like, you know, make a name for themselves.
Right.
But you don't get that impression from Woody Derenberger, at least at first. Over the course of his like interactions that he has with Injured Cold over the years, they get more and more fantastical. Yeah. And like Injured Cold talks about being from a galaxy called like Lanulos and describes the like where he's from, and it's all futuristic and it's kind of like bad sci-fi. Yeah. And that's kind of what it evolved into, and I get the impression maybe that this initial I'm only like sticking credibility to this initial interaction that he had with Injured Cold because it was sort of out of the blue for him. And in his interview, you can tell he's not trying to sensationalize it. He's just trying to report it as it happened to him. Right. And I think the subsequent ones were just sort of where he started to take the story and run with it. And like kind of that's when he started to figure out like, oh, I could like, you know, make a living off this. I could write books. I could be like a science fiction writer. Yep. So like the
now
later,
I know a guy.
Right.
I know a guy.
Injured Cold.
Give me all kinds of details.
Right. So John Keel, the author of the Mothman Prophecies, interviewed Woody Derenberger, as did Gray Barker, a UFO writer. Yep. And they all sort of had the same impression that Woody Derenberger was telling the truth, that this was an authentic experience that he had, at least this initial interaction. Right. And it's interesting that this occurred at the same time as the Mothman flaps. Yeah. I'm trying to find a date here. So it was November 2nd, 1966.
Oh, yeah. So that was even before the cemetery guys. Yeah. That was 10 days before.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. It was before that. So
Injured Cold predates the Mothman sightings.
Predates, yeah. Very, very closely.
Interesting.
Super interesting. You said 66, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. 10 days before. Holy shit, man.
That's wild.
So, yeah. Okay. We can't get into theories yet, but that's an interesting detail.
I have some theories.
For a potential theory. Yeah, so Injured Cold is super awesome and creepy.
Yeah. He's a very good character in here because he's named. How often do you get, like, names of, like, a character in a cryptid or an alien of some kind?
Yeah, tells you their own name.
Being.
Yeah, I
Injured
think
Cold.
There were even a couple other potential encounters with Injured Cold.
Yes.
Yeah, commonly known as the Grinning Man, which is awful. It's said, supposedly, that he still visits West Virginia to this day.
Oh, interesting.
Which is awesome. So he was even first seen, even before Woody, October 16th, 1966, like a couple weeks before. These two boys in New Jersey apparently saw him like they were out walking around. Right. I think he was wearing like maybe a blue-green metallic suit. Yep. Like it was like a specific detail of how weird it was. Yep. That it was like this shiny suit. I don't remember exactly what he said to them. I think it was very brief. Like I think they saw him and were kind of creeped out and like ran off. Right. And then the second sighting was Woody, and then the third sighting was in Point Pleasant. So he's kind of like getting closer. Right. Because he was in New Jersey, and then he's like 50 miles away with Woody, and then now he's in Point Pleasant for this third encounter. And this was this family, the Lilly family. They had been reporting poltergeist activity in their home. Right. They had been seeing weird things like these diamond-shaped lights, hearing noises. And their daughter, Linda, I guess, was sleeping the one night and awoke to see a man standing over her. She said, quote, "It was a man, a big man, very broad. I couldn't see his face very well, but I could see that he was grinning at me. Ugh. He walked around the bed and stood right over me. I screamed and hid under the covers, and when I looked again, he was gone."
Fuck that.
So, yeah, and apparently the Lilly family didn't stay in their house for very long after that.
Nor
There's weird stuff going on, and then this dude supposedly just stands over your daughter's bed. Mm-hmm. I don't know how old she was exactly, but, I mean, it was implied that she was a kid. Right. So... It's
interesting, because taken by itself, that interaction could just be attributed to, like, sleep paralysis. Right. Because that is, like, a common... sort of description of sleep paralysis. Waking up, seeing a dark, big, broad figure standing over you grinning is one of the types of sleep paralysis that people have. Yeah. but put into the context of being, was that in West Virginia?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was in Point Pleasant.
So it's in Point Pleasant
Yeah.
during the Mothman flap.
Yep. And they were
After-
already having weird experiences,
Right.
which, again, a lot of people were, with seeing flashing lights, seeing lights hovering around, particularly over the TNT plant.
Yep.
There were a lot of people that said they saw, like, red lights dancing around,
Yep.
and people having a lot of weird, like, electrical malfunctions all happening around the same time, like with Newell's TV
Yeah.
showing those
that
weird
was-
patterns and
that was
going
the
out.
strangest part about that Mothman experience
Yeah.
was that like the electrical interference.
Yeah.
So is that
came first.
Mothman? Is that the UFOs?
Right.
What is it? Injured Cold?
Right. Who is doing this? Yeah, so Injured Cold was, like, making his way there.
Right.
So then he's there. So,
For anybody who's paying attention to our
Freaky.
social media feed,
yes.
then we posted a photo
yes.
yesterday
Yeah, today.
today of a black and white photo of a man standing with like sunglasses on and a hat.
Yeah.
And supposedly that is a photo of Injured Cold
Injured Cold.
when he went to visit, was it Mary Hyre?
Yeah, I think so.
One of the reporters who initially reported the Mothman stories and sort of like broke the Mothman stories. Her name was Mary Hyre, and a strange man who may or may not have been Injured Cold came to visit her,
Yep.
and that photo was snapped in some capacity. It wasn't very clear on who took that photo or how it was taken or
Right.
why it was allowed to be taken.
Yeah,
The interesting part about
that-
that photo though is that he's not grinning.
He's not grinning. And he looks like a pretty normal dude. I mean, he looks a little weird,
Right.
but
Definitely.
doesn't look unusual. I mean, if I saw that out of context, I wouldn't be like, whoa,
Right.
obvious
That
alien.
guy's, yeah, an alien.
Like,
But
clearly he just came from
what's the best
outer
disguise
space.
for an alien?
Well, right. That's the thing that gets me about the suit being like made of this weird futuristic material, but being a suit is like the alien trying to like approximate
Right.
what humans look like or what they expect you to look like and not getting it quite right,
Right.
because they aren't human.
Right.
And I think we give ourselves too much credit thinking that aliens like watch us all the time or like care that much about us. Like, I think they're probably curious,
Yeah.
but I don't think they're like obsessed with us.
No.
We're not really much.
It would be like
obsessed
the
with.
equivalent of like a human going into like the rainforest and like studying like creatures for, you go for like a week or a month or whatever,
Yeah.
and you go in, document things, take some samples, and then
Yeah.
you leave.
Exactly.
And that would be the equivalent of those animals in the Amazon thinking like, oh, these humans are just watching us every moment of every day, and
Exactly.
they're like thinking about us all the time.
Yeah.
When really it's just
no.
short little like dips into us.
Yeah.
And to like figure out scientific
Yeah.
knowledge of some kind.
Yeah. Who knows what they're doing?
Right.
Yeah. He tried. He was like, humans wear suits, right?
Right.
And this is the only material I have is this weird metal, like metallic metal.
Right.
This is going to be fine. Everybody wears this.
Yeah.
And then he got here and he was like, shit, I'm so overdressed. Nobody is wearing metallic suits here.
This is West Virginia. Like,
Crap. Yeah. He
everybody's
just went to the wrong
farmers
place.
and- yeah.
He could have landed somewhere else and he would have been.
Right. Well,
Like-
maybe he wasn't at the wrong place. Maybe he was exactly
Maybe,
where
yeah.
he needed to be.
He was exactly where he needed to be.
Yeah.
He would have blended in somewhere else.
Right.
Maybe. But yeah, so she had some odd. She was the Point Pleasant correspondent for the Athens, Ohio newspaper, The Messenger.
This is Mary Hyre.
Mary Hyre, not Injured Cold.
Right.
Mary Hyre. So she wrote extensively about the sightings. She had a particularly active weekend, apparently. I don't think it said what weekend, but she had gotten over 500 phone calls over the course of one weekend of people seeing strange lights
It's wild.
in the Point Pleasant area and nearby.
That's 500.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of people.
So there was something going on in Point Pleasant.
Yeah. Yeah, she had a weird experience. So January 67. So the Mothman sightings in Point Pleasant started November 66.
Right.
So this was a few months later. She's working in her office in the county courthouse, and a man walked in the door. And this is apparently Injured Cold.
Right.
It sounds like. Yeah, he spoke in this very low, halting voice. He asked for directions to Welsh, West Virginia,
Right.
which I don't know what's in Welsh.
Which Injured Cold was asking Woody Derenberger what that town is
that's true.
up ahead. So
Yeah.
asking for directions is part of his MO.
It's a common thing. She said that there was no real reason for it, but that he terrified her. There was nothing, like he didn't do anything threatening. He seemed a little odd, but there was just no reason for her to be scared.
Right.
And this is a woman who, assuming, a reporter, is around a lot of people.
Right.
This isn't somebody who's like not used to human interaction.
Right.
She's just, for whatever reason, she said his eyes were staring at me almost hypnotically. They just had a weird encounter, but the funny part about it was at some point she had to answer a telephone call
Right.
while he was in there. And she said while she was on the call, he picked up a pen from her desk and looked at it in amazement, quote, as if he had never seen a pen before. And then he just grabbed it and loudly laughed and then ran out of the building.
Like,
So
what is that?
what is that?
What is
like,
that? Is that
maybe not related, but
Right.
I'd like to think it's related.
right?
And this wasn't the first time that she saw her. She saw him. She saw him again a few weeks later. She was crossing the street near her office and saw the same guy. He's apparently very, recognizable.
I mean, if she was terrified by him,
Right.
if she saw him
Yeah.
again,
He was committed to memory.
right?
She said he appeared to be startled when he realized that she was watching him. And he turned away quickly and then ran for a large black car that suddenly came around the corner. He climbed in it and it drove away.
Interesting.
Like,
And it's interesting that he's
bizarre.
using a vehicle,
A vehicle.
like a car, like a human car.
Yeah, and somebody else was driving.
Right.
So, is Injured Cold maybe related to the Men in Black?
Right.
Which we'll talk about in a minute.
Right.
We're almost there.
We're gonna dive into the Men in Black here.
We're gonna dive into that. So, yeah, that was, I think, her only encounters with him, but more than once.
Injured Cold is the only named character in the Mothman saga,
Yeah,
other than Mothman,
Other than
which
Mothman.
isn't necessarily his own name because he didn't name himself. We named him
yeah.
Mothman,
He never said yo.
but Injured Cold named himself, which is a
Which
weird
is
distinction to have.
Super weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Injured Cold is sort of the last major player or event that occurred before the collapse of the Silver Bridge,
Yes.
which is arguably the climax of the whole Mothman story.
right.
What it's all building up to and then sort of ramps down from.
Yeah. Because all these sightings happened, which, as far as the reports go, there's at least 100 people that came forward in some manner, whether they told somebody that they knew, told the police, told a reporter, with even more that were apparently afraid to report their sightings, which I think is another key thing, too, is that there were people who supposedly saw him, experienced something bizarre, and never didn't want to tell anybody because they didn't want that attention. They didn't want to be, a lot of people in a lot of different areas that have these sightings like this are mocked and ridiculed, and they have their credibility questioned. They don't want to come forward.
Right. This is a small town in West Virginia.
Yeah.
This isn't
In the 60s.
in the 60s. Everything was very conservative.
Yeah.
Civil Rights Act had just been passed.
Right.
This is a very wild time in West Virginia to be coming forward and saying that you saw a 7-foot-tall Mothman who was flying around and terrorizing things.
Yeah. Or a UFO, or
Yeah, a
a
UFO came
Man in
down
Black,
and a
or
green
anything.
man came out and
Yeah.
smiled at you.
Yeah.
It's weird.
yeah, telling people that you saw a group of men in suits that told you not to talk about what you saw. That isn't a thing that was smiled upon.
Right.
Maybe it was grinned upon.
Grinned upon.
Yes. But that was not, yeah. So there were a lot of people. So basically November 66 to December 67, December 15th, 10 days before Christmas,
Yep.
the 700-foot bridge linking Point Pleasant to Ohio, the Silver Bridge,
Yep.
collapsed
Yes, it did.
during rush hour traffic.
Ugh.
Dozens of vehicles plunged in the Ohio River, and 46 people were killed.
Yep.
That was one of the gripes I had with the movie, is that they made it 100 people died. It's just why? It was already a lot.
It's the most loss of life from a bridge collapse in American history.
Really?
Yep.
Holy shit.
Right? Or maybe it
did not
was
know
at the
that.
time,
Damn.
but it definitely was and maybe still is
Jesus.
the worst loss of life from a bridge collapse.
don't exaggerate that.
Right.
That's a lot of people.
Right.
So, yeah, 2 of those people were never found.
Right.
And the other 44, interesting fact,
Yeah.
are buried together in the town cemetery of Gallipolis?
Gallipolis.
Gallipolis in Ohio, about 5 miles southwest. So,
Interesting.
yeah. And on the same night, this family that lived near the TNT plant at the time counted more than 12 eerie lights that flashed above their home and vanished into the forest.
Interesting.
So,
Many of the people who died as well were relatives of people who reported sightings of the Mothman.
no way.
Yeah.
I did not know that fact.
Many of them.
Holy shit. And another interesting thing
Yeah.
that we talked about, didn't talk about, need to talk about, is the fact that there were a lot of people in the town, both that had sightings and people that didn't, that had these dream premonitions
Yes.
of the bridge collapsing, had dreams that they couldn't explain, these nightmares
Right.
of them being submerged in water
Yep.
or seeing people submerged in water. It was all very hazy, but just they knew that there was something in the water and that they saw these colorful things floating in the water, which is really creepy because people were Christmas shopping.
Right.
And it was said that there were like wrapped Christmas packages floating in the water after the collapse, which is awful.
So sort of like one of the main themes of the Mothman sightings is the idea of Mothman being a harbinger of death.
Yes.
That he either caused or knew about the impending collapse of the Silver Bridge.
Yep.
And was trying to warn people that this bridge was going to collapse, or if you think that he made it collapse himself, that he was taking credit for the collapse of the bridge.
Right.
So Linda Scarberry, who was one of the initial experiencers of the Mothman, who was in the car that was being chased going 100 miles an hour.
Yep.
So she was the one who saw Mothman supposedly hundreds of times in the course of her life.
Jesus.
She had a quote. She said, "It seems like it doesn't want to hurt you. It just wants to communicate with you," describing her interactions with Mothman.
Interesting.
And that's sort of a common theme, that he's not trying to hurt you. He's trying to, like, you know, like he's looking at you, and there's something about like his red eyes where he's trying to communicate something that's going to happen. And
yeah.
People described him as very like sad almost, or being like a very like emotionally intelligent creature.
Yeah.
Which is a really like weird thing to talk about a cryptid. Like, I can't think of another cryptid that was described as being emotional or even trying to communicate in any way. They're always usually just like monsters.
Yeah.
But there's this weird aspect of Mothman of, you know, trying to warn people. The premonitions that people were having, was that Mothman communicating telepathically like how Indrid Cold did with Woody Derenberger?
Right.
Was he like communicating these images that he saw to people who were relatives of the ones who would then die in the Silver Bridge?
Yeah.
To try to warn them that this was going to happen, and he just couldn't.
Right. Couldn't get it out there.
Right.
Because they were getting these like fragmented images.
Right.
But who would see that and be like, oh, I bet the bridge is going to collapse.
It's like it's a classic like that Greek mythological person who was cursed with like the ability to see the future, but every time she described the events of the future, like nobody would believe her. Yeah.
Sorry, my dog is under the table right now dreaming and making some, I don't know if you can hear it on the recording, but yes. But yeah.
It's cute. It's
yeah.
really cute.
Super cute. She's adorable. She's super relaxed right now. But yeah, he was trying hard.
He was trying, but nobody would believe him, or nobody could believe him.
Right.
Which leads into one of the most famous photos of the Mothman clinging onto the side of the Silver Bridge.
Yes.
Was it the day it collapsed, or in the days leading up to the
collapse?
It was
I remember it being very close.
Right. It
was definitely, like within a week, I would say.
It's this kind of grainy black and white photo.
As
you see
they are.
Of course, every cryptid.
Damn it.
They're just blurry animals.
Yeah, that's just what they are.
So it's the bridge. It's just like a classic kind of like, I don't know how you would describe that bridge, but just like a classic bridge with these like vertical beams, like going up and over the actual road of the bridge, and he's kind of clinging to the side, and you can see it's almost like, I would have described him as like a Batman, not a Mothman. Like he looks very bat-like in the way that he's like clinging onto the side of this. Yeah. And from what I can tell, nobody's ever been able to like fully debunk this photo. Right. It's never just been like, oh, that's clearly a hoax or anything. Like I get the impression that whatever is on or whatever's in the photo was actually there in real life and was photographed. So whether or not that's actually Mothman or somebody who created a Mothman costume and clung to the side of a bridge, it just seems like a very elaborate hoax. Yeah. Especially given the fact that like they would have to know that the bridge was going to collapse and how significant the photo was going to be afterwards.
Yeah, exactly.
So it just seems like a weird thing, because the Silver Bridge doesn't really factor into the Mothman story at all until the collapse.
Yeah. He wasn't even necessarily like sighted around the bridge a lot. Like that wasn't a thing that people said. Like he was by the TNT site. Right. If anything, if he had a place he hung out. Right. But not the bridge. Right. It wasn't like he was flying around there and he was like focused on it. It was just
so why would somebody
seemingly random
like hoax this photo of the Mothman on the side of the Silver Bridge? It would just be super random.
Right.
Unless it's a huge coincidence.
Unless it's a huge coincidence.
I guess is possible, but
everything's
not probable.
Possible. It's all unknowable.
Yeah, it's all unknowable.
Shit. Yeah, and that. So the fun part to me, so going into like the harbinger of death, the harbinger of disaster, Point Pleasant may be the most kind of well-known place that he has hung out and kind of been there before a big disaster, but there's many other times in history that supposedly the Mothman or a Mothman-like creature has popped up, and let me tell you about some of them. Right. So Actually, one of the first ones was in 78, the miners in Freiburg, Germany.
Yep.
Which you know about this one.
Yes. This was one of the sort of events where Mothman was spotted that I feel like it's very credible and it's not connected to any sort of like mass hysteria or somebody hearing the story of Mothman and just like creating a story that like piggybacks on his fame.
Yeah.
This seemed like a very authentic sort of standalone encounter that features a Mothman-like creature doing Mothman-like things,
Yeah.
but so very far away from Point Pleasant, West Virginia, that it would be a huge coincidence, or it would just be a very like strange thing for somebody to have read about this like weird happenings in the United States, and then someone in Germany makes up this story.
Yeah, because this was like 10-ish years later.
Right. Before, the Mothman Prophecy movie, when this was still a very niche thing that I'm sure some people knew about, but how far could that story really travel?
Right, yeah, could that have really gotten to Germany, per se?
Back before the age of the internet as well.
Right.
So,
Yeah, nowadays we know about weird shit that happens everywhere, but not really back then in the same way.
Right.
So,
okay. So, September 10th, 1978, at a mine in Freiburg, Germany, there was a group of 21 miners who arrived to the mine in the morning to go to work. So, like classic mine entrance, like a hole in the side of a rock face, with like the wooden support beams holding up the rock above it.
yeah.
They're gonna go enter the mine. These 21 dudes, but standing in front of the mine, like in front of the door blocking it, is a dark figure with wings on its back, blocking the door.
Yeah.
And as they approached it, it unfurls its wings and blocks the door.
Jesus.
So they decide, like, fuck that, I'm not going near that. And what's super weird about this is, like, they all seem very casual about it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this, like, weird winged creature is blocking the entrance to the mine.
Yeah.
They decide, like, we're just gonna, like, hang out here and just, like, do work outside of the mine until this thing decides to leave.
Yeah, wait for him to fly away.
And he just stood there. Like, it doesn't say how long they were there, but, like, he was there for, like, a long time.
Yeah.
And whenever they would try to approach it, it let out a sound, and this is a quote, a sound like 50 people screaming.
Oh my God.
Or a train in peril trying to brake at the sight of a twisted rail.
Oh God.
50 people screaming.
That is the
such
worst
an
thing I've ever
intense
heard.
description of a noise.
That's the worst description of his screech that I've ever heard.
Right. So you have Mothman here.
Oh my God.
Who's standing in front of this mine, blocking it,
Yeah.
shrieking at people to like get them to like stand back and stay away.
Oh my God.
So the miners are like, oh, whatever, that's weird.
That's weird.
And they just hang out outside.
Just another day at the mine.
So pretty soon after they have this experience and they're doing their thing and Mothman's just hanging out outside, they hear a rumbling and there was a huge collapse inside the mine.
Yeah.
That would have killed all 21 of the miners had Mothman not been standing outside.
Yeah.
Blocking the entrance.
So he helped.
So he helped. That's why the question of whether or not Mothman is a harbinger of death who's just trying to warn people about impending disaster or whether or not he causes it, I come down on the side of him trying to warn people.
Yeah.
He's trying to help us.
Yeah.
If you go back to Linda Scarberry's quote, Mothman is trying to communicate with us.
Yeah.
He's not trying to like cause this harm. Otherwise he could just do it and sort of hide. He wouldn't need to like come out and like scare us.
Yeah.
It makes sense that he's trying to help us. He's trying to communicate. He has this like emotional intelligence and understands humans or wants to help humans.
And that was the one interaction that I had read about that I was like, oh, he's not really
right
causing these things. I mean, he didn't do anything in that mine.
Right. No, he prevented 21 people from dying.
Because he wouldn't have stopped them from going in. So, yeah, that does. I mean, every other instance of him showing up places, he's not preventing anything or helping anybody per se, but he's just there.
Right.
Which is... Yeah, there was a region in southeastern China that had sightings of a figure that resembled the Mothman in 1926. Going way back.
Way before any sort of Mothman hysteria.
Yeah, 60 years before he showed up in Point Pleasant. Locals called him the Man-Dragon. Man-Dragon. Apparently, and he was hovering above this dam, and that's just where they would see him, was around this, I don't know how to say the name, but it's a dam in southeastern China.
There you go.
And then the dam collapsed 40 billion gallons of water flooded the surrounding farming villages. 15,000 people died.
Jesus.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Easily the biggest like disaster as far as just number of lives taken immediately that he was present for.
Mothman.
Yeah, then he had Point Pleasant, he had the Freiburg thing. It's said that around 1985 there were scientists and workers at Chernobyl that supposedly saw a huge black bird-like creature. They nicknamed him the Blackbird of Chernobyl.
Blackbird of Chernobyl. There's actually a whole tradition in Russia of seeing winged men flying around.
Really?
It's like a relatively common, like, cryptid that people see a lot.
Shit.
Or like a weird, like, borderline religious sort of idea of like seeing like a, you know, like a spirit or whatever. This winged man flying around Russia.
Like an angel.
Like an angel.
Shit.
Like a headless angel.
A headless angel.
With giant red eyes.
Why? Why no head?
Right.
Yeah, no, he apparently... Oh, and people who saw the red-eyed beast around this time of Chernobyl reported a series of strange, harassing phone calls and nightmares leading up to the explosion.
Right.
And then, boom, April 26, 86, several people saw the, quote, huge blackbird flying around the smoke after the explosion.
Yeah.
So he was just hanging out. Even people in Pripyat had claimed to see the creature. Supposedly, people, like, leading up to the terrorist attacks on September 11th, a black-winged creature, during the attack, as the second plane hit, eyewitnesses reported a creature flying parallel to the plane.
That's wild.
Which is awful.
There's
and then...
a famous photo.
Yeah, that photo. Look up that photo. 9/11 Mothman photo.
Yep.
It's horrifying. And yeah, these people also were warned by Men in Black to stop talking about what they saw.
Right.
In 2006, this is one of my favorites. La Crosse, Wisconsin. A Cherokee man and his son were driving down this isolated stretch of road.
Right.
And Mothman apparently, like, got real physical with their car. They said that he flew alongside it and then directly in front of it, close enough to touch it. And apparently they, as a result, got a really good look at him. One of my favorite descriptions of him, that he was bat-like and fleshy, which is gross, and with sparse hair and red eyes the size of road reflectors,
right.
they said. But most interestingly, the father described the monster's high-pitched screech that he said it gave them vertigo and made them sick to their stomachs to the point where he had to pull over so his son could vomit on the side of the road.
Jesus.
Because of this noise.
The sound of 50 people screaming.
Yeah. Yeah. And then a year later, he was apparently spotted around another bridge collapse in Minneapolis, which, weirdly enough, this bridge was opened for traffic the same year that the Silver Bridge collapsed.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so this was, 2007.
It's a weird parallel.
Yeah, so just odd that they started seeing sightings of him in June, late June, and then about a month later, that bridge collapsed and 13 people died. Yeah, there were apparently sightings in Mexico in 2009. There were sightings in 2011 in Japan. An American visiting Japan, him and his friend had seen a creature similar to the Mothman around the Fukushima plant.
Oh, wow.
And then it wasn't until he got home that he found out what had happened. And then now you can Google, there have been apparently about 55 sightings in Chicago last year.
Right.
2017, Google Mothman sighting Chicago. Right. Somebody made a whole website. Lon Strickler made a website where people were able to report their sightings and describe them. And I have read quite a few, and there are some that are really terrifying.
Right.
So, yeah, this is not limited to Point Pleasant in any sense.
Point Pleasant is just kind of like the most famous and sort of the most dense, I would say, and also has an associated tragedy that just makes it a good sort of like anchor point in the Mothman saga. Yeah. Which spans like, hundreds of years if you really go back into it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's tons. I mean, really, those are just the most known examples, but there's all kinds of areas of the world that have reported something similar to the Mothman. They all have different names and some slightly varying descriptions, but all the same idea.
Right.
Which is, freaky to think about.
Very freaky.
So, all right, so what are some of the theories?
So some theories.
Of Mothman.
Oh, man.
What is Mothman?
What is Mothman?
So, alien.
There's always a possibility because, the UFO sightings in the area. He could be some sort of alien creature, which I don't think that an alien is really the most accurate because he has wings.
Right.
He seemed, if we believe that he ate that dog,
Right.
then he just seems too like earthly to be an alien per se.
Right.
He could just be a straight up cryptid.
Yeah.
Either some unknown species of animal that we have yet to, that is yet to be known to science.
Yep.
Or a mutated version of an already existing animal.
Yes.
Which that's where
Hence the TNT site.
Right. So the TNT site. I'll just get into this for a second.
Yeah.
So you have the TNT site, which is leaching some kind of weird, dangerous chemicals into a wildlife preserve that is known for its birds.
Yeah.
So one of the theories of what Mothman is, or what people have seen that they have attributed to Mothman, is that he is a sandhill crane.
Yeah.
Which is a very tall, type of bird with red markings around the eyes.
Yeah.
That could potentially, if you shined a light at it, could potentially be glowing at night.
Right.
It's not native to West Virginia, but it flies over West Virginia on its migration route.
Yeah.
So it would make sense that people wouldn't be used to seeing it and would then misidentify what it was because it's an animal that's not a part of the ecosystem.
Right.
That theory, I think, might be one of the most likely, rational theories. Maybe it's not necessarily a regular sandhill crane. It could be like a mutated version that landed in the TNT area and was, or grew up in the TNT area that had some kind of weird genetic mutations that made its legs
bird.
Extra thick or
Spent
something.
his childhood in the TNT area. It's awful. Just mutating.
Because if you look at a sandhill crane, there's not, like specifically Linda Scriber described it as having really muscular legs.
Right. And
obviously a crane has these like tiny little stick legs.
Yeah.
It's not, maybe the wingspan and the general height of it could be an approximation, because if you're looking up into the sky, you don't have reference points, so you might think it's bigger than it really is. But the legs would be very obviously these skinny little stick legs, not thick human muscular legs.
Right. That's what gets me, is that there's I don't know, a lot of the encounters with Mothman have been on the ground.
Right.
And I feel like you would, I don't know.
You'd have reference points to where you could actually judge the size.
Yeah.
Relatively accurately.
Yeah.
Unless, if you think about a sandhill crane, they spend a lot of their time in standing water.
Yeah.
So if, you said that the TNT area was leaching chemicals into the ponds.
Right.
So if it's wading in a pond that's contaminated, then its legs would be the most affected. So maybe the legs have tumors on them and are all inflamed or something that make them look like
I didn't even think
thicker
about that.
legs.
Yeah.
So I think if I were to just be a complete skeptic and rationalist, I would say that Mothman sightings are probably some sort of crane or an owl or something that people are just misidentifying.
Yeah.
Which is kind of
you have to pick something rational.
I would probably assume that would be the rational theory.
Not fun at all.
No.
Not my theory, but one of the craziest ones I heard was that it was a man with some type of very futuristic, potentially, experimenting with crazy government top secret technology, but that it's just a man with a jetpack on.
Well, then where do the wings come
Which is
from?
insane. I know. People were just oh, well, that's how it went so fast. He's got a jetpack on, so he can go 100 miles an hour. It's just no, this doesn't. No, the eyes glowing. People were saying that's his night vision goggles that he's wearing, which, that was the only part that I was okay, sure, but I'm no, there's no.
No, that leaves too much up to
because that was also how he can just ascend from the ground and just go up into the air like a helicopter.
And the sound that guy with his dog heard, it sounded like a generator winding up.
Right. Yeah, that's the jetpack powering up or whatever. I don't know, but that's kind of goes along with the whole idea that UFOs aren't really alien, but that it's just government technology that's under wraps.
Right.
That it is potentially using UFO technology, but who knows? But it's just stuff that that isn't known to us regular people.
Right.
But just
the government's been using
and
for years.
Why the hell is this dude just flying? Why Point Pleasant? What's he doing?
Right.
What's he doing? Why?
Right. That's the thing, is what's the motive there?
Yeah.
Who benefits?
And then that doesn't explain it, that same thing being spotted in all these other places. If it was just Point Pleasant for a year, this was weird. Maybe it was just some some dude just dicking around.
Right.
He works for the government. He was sweet, I'm taking this home.
Shit and people were looking for him.
Yeah, people were what the hell? That's the Men in Black. Is they're where's this fucking guy?
Right.
You need to fire his ass. He's not even just going to get fired. That dude's not existing anymore.
Nope. Dissolved in a vat of acid
But
somewhere.
yeah, that only made sense if this is like a one-off
Right.
weird thing. And it
not.
doesn't explain the bridge. Because the bridge is significant, I think. If that had just happened in the midst of everything else and then like they still had sightings,
Right.
that could just be chalked up as like a weird thing.
Right.
But the premonition dreams and then the fact that like basically the bridge collapsed and then like nobody really saw Mothman
Right.
again.
The sightings of Mothman dropped off almost completely after that.
At least in Point Pleasant, but like
Right.
that was like it.
Right.
They were just
there's those
done.
places here and there where it started to pop like there's little flaps here and there, but
Yeah.
not like it's not like a continuous timeline.
Right. So that's why the bridge collapsing is so significant. So yeah, those are some of the theories.
Yeah. So I have
I don't have any theories for the record.
I have a grand. This is like
don't
a
know.
grand theory that incorporates everything that I know about it.
Jesus.
That isn't necessarily logical.
Yeah.
Or like, rational in any way, shape, or form. But this is sort of the narrative that I created in my head that I think makes the most sense.
Okay.
So
I'm ready for this.
you have our dimension or our plane of existence that we live in, either parallel to, adjacent to, in proximity to our plane of existence or our universe is another dimension, plane of existence, universe. Okay, so ours exists side by side with another. So we're A, this is universe B.
Yeah.
So in universe B, you have Mothman, which is maybe representative of the sort of like the life that lives there, or, who knows? We have no ability to know what's going on in that other universe. And so a place like Point Pleasant or they talk about certain thin places. I think it's used more in like the paranormal community where you talk about a place where like the spirit dimension and like our living dimension are like the space between them is like the thinnest.
Yeah.
So what if Point Pleasant, West Virginia is a thin place
Right.
between our universe and the adjacent universe?
Yep.
And so Mothman either intentionally leaves that universe B, to enter our universe A, and intentionally comes in or accidentally crosses through some portal and comes into our universe and finds himself here and has an experience of space and time that is not like ours. So I imagine it like if you're standing on a road, you can see a little distance in the future ahead of you, or you can look backwards and see a little distance behind you. So maybe Mothman has the ability to see the future and see like what is coming in the timeline and sees the Silver Bridge collapse. And being an empathetic creature wants to warn people that this impending disaster is going to happen and kill all these people. So he's flying around doing his thing, trying to warn people, trying to figure out, like how can I like prevent this tragedy from happening? Because that seems to be his MO throughout time, is that he's trying to warn people about impending disasters.
Yeah.
Concurrent, so Mothman escapes. Then you have the law and order of Universe B that then has to come and collect Mothman.
Yeah.
So this could be a sort of like Men in Black situation like in the movies where you have like a government organization, not a Universe A government organization, but Universe B government organization that has to come and collect Mothman and bring him back to his respective universe.
Right. And by movie, you mean Men in Black.
Yes. The actual movie.
With Will Smith.
Men in Black with Will Smith.
Yes.
Tommy Lee Jones.
Tommy Lee Jones. Awesome movie.
An awesome cinematic
movie.
achievement.
If you haven't seen it,
do it.
See it.
Now.
It's an older, not old, but, we watched it a lot as a kid.
It's early 2000s.
Yeah, it's
it
very
shows
much,
its age, but
it's very much that genre, but, it's perfect.
It's fun. It's enjoyable.
It's an awesome movie.
Yeah.
And it has Will Smith.
Right.
Will Smith is the best.
He is the
okay,
best.
continue with your theory. Side note.
So these Men in Black have to come and collect Mothman.
Yeah.
So they come into our universe, and that was the UFO sightings, where they're, sort of hovering low over the ground with a spotlight, searching for Mothman.
Yeah.
You have Indrid Cold, who is arguably like the caseworker for the Mothman case, who's coming looking for Mothman, trying to find him, which is why if you track where he is at each time, he's getting closer and closer to Point Pleasant.
Yeah. Why
he lands and talks to Woody Derenberger and was like, hey, what's that town ahead of you?
Yeah.
Woody's like, oh, it's like Parkersville, Ohio. And he's like, shit, like I'm still not in Point Pleasant.
Yeah.
Leaves and goes somewhere else. And then you have Indrid Cold then figures out by interviewing people, because we haven't really got into it, but the Men in Black occur at many places in Point Pleasant, showing up to witnesses, trying to sort of intimidate them into not talking about it anymore, interviewing them, trying to figure stuff out.
Yeah.
So they figure out that Mothman is trying to warn these people about something, because maybe that's part of his sort of like what he does or what he like needs to do is
Yeah.
warn people because he's empathetic. So they figure out, oh, there's going to be an impending disaster. Figure out, oh, this bridge is going to collapse because they either have the ability to look forward in the future or, you know, whatever. Their experience of time is different than ours. And they go and they figure out, okay, Mothman's going to be at this place at this time because that's when the bridge collapses, and they know where to collect him.
Right.
So then Mothman shows up trying to prevent people from dying in the bridge collapse.
Yeah.
Injured Cold and or the sort of like, you know, Universe B Men in Black collect Mothman.
Yep.
And that's why the sightings drop off completely after the Silver Bridge collapse.
Right. Which makes sense. I mean, that's like the common thing with like like different universes and all that stuff is like, don't interfere. It's possible that these people collecting him know like you can't stop this thing from happening. Like this is what's on their timeline. This is supposed to happen for whatever reason, but like you can't fuck with it.
Right.
So get the hell back.
And so maybe throughout history, Mothman just continuously sort of escapes his universe into our universe and tries to warn people, and they just continue to come and collect him. And they just happen to do a pretty, like, you know, bumbling job that one time in the 1960s. They got complacent.
I mean, whatever. It's not really that hard to think that government everywhere is kind of...
Or maybe that was just the first time that Mothman sort of came into our universe at a time when there was mass communication, phones, newspapers.
Yeah.
Technology was able to spread information faster. You know, if you go to collect Mothman in the 1500s,
right.
you know, you see like 6 people. It's not like they're going to go be able to tell anybody. So those stories just die with the people who experienced it. Yeah. So Mothman happening in Point Pleasant in the 1960s was able to be documented and became such a big event that they since then have, you know, sort of streamlined their whole process, and now they're better at, you know, collecting Mothman.
Until 2017.
Until 2017.
We still don't know. I mean, I remember telling you about those Chicago things, and we were both like, holy shit.
Something's going to happen.
Chicago, like Mothman. Yep. This is crazy. And then we're still waiting.
Well, one could argue that the like, huge amount of like violence that happens in Chicago on a yearly basis is just a continuous tragedy that Mothman is trying to prevent. Yeah. Maybe he's flying around from sort of murder to murder, trying to be like, no, wait, no.
Yeah, stop.
Oh, shit.
So Mothman's just a good guy. Yeah. He's a great guy.
Mothman is a weirdly, like, moral cryptid that seems to have, like, a high amount of emotional intelligence and, like, willingness to help humans in any way that he can.
Which is so nice of him.
Yeah.
Yeah. He hasn't quite succeeded yet, but he's trying really hard. We love him for it. So that's Mothman.
That's Mothman.
I mean, there's more to him.
Oh, yeah. We could talk for days.
We could have talked for, this whole day.
Right.
But that's the gist.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, this is Unknowable.
This is Unknowable.
This is what it's going to be.
Yep.
Us talking about weird shit.
Right. Weird shit.
It's going to be awesome.
And, you know, not going sort of too deep into it because we don't want to bore you with the details. If you want to know more about Mothman, go Google it.
Google it.
Do what we did.
So much info about him.
So much info.
So many more, like, weird descriptions of him. Go definitely check out the Chicago sightings.
Yes. Google some photos.
Google some photos. The Chicago sightings are kind of cool because the website has a interactive map type of thing, so you can see where he was spotted, what people said about him. But yeah, go look him up. He's cool.
Look him up. Start searching for cryptids.
Yeah. Get into this world with us.
Dive in.
We're gonna tell you about stuff. So
yeah.
So we don't know what's coming next.
Nope.
For a topic, but we'll let you all know.
Yeah.
If you have anything that you want us to talk about, any favorite mysteries, particularly any local mysteries in Maine or New England.
Yep.
Let us know. If there's anything like super cool that happened in your town.
Yep.
Let us know.
Right. We want to know about it. We want to hear about it. We want to talk about it.
Yeah. So, yeah, message us on Instagram.
Yep.
You can email us at unknowablepodcast@yahoo.com.
Yep.
Follow us on Facebook, Unknowable Podcast. We've got a Twitter at Unknowable Podcast. We will soon have a website.
Yep.
Probably just unknowablepodcast.com. So just bookmark it now.
Hopefully.
In the next few days.
Right.
But yeah, so we want to thank some people.
Yep.
Particularly, mostly my husband, Nate.
Nate Johnson.
Nate Johnson got our whole room set up.
Yep.
He's helping us with all this sound stuff because we have no idea what we're doing.
Right.
He edited this episode.
Yep.
So
literally, this podcast would not exist.
Yeah.
In the way that it does without Nate Johnson.
Not at all. So thank you.
Thank you, Nate.
Thank you to everyone in my life, or our lives, that supports us liking weird shit.
Yes. Thank you, Abby White, for putting up with me talking about Mothman and ranting about various cryptozoology and paranormal related things on a daily basis. Thank you for putting up with that.
Abby's awesome.
Yep. Thank you to Christine Terrell for birthing both
For
of
birthing us, yes.
and instilling
Thank you for
us
birthing
with
us.
curiosity and instilling us with the drive to find out more that there is in this world.
Yeah. And thank you to all these other weirdos on the internet that keep all this stuff documented and have cool websites that we can look up.
Right.
Because there's a lot of them.
Yep.
And
too many to name.
Yeah. I think that's it.
Right.
All right.
Damn. Episode 0. Mothman.
Episode 0.
Done.
Mothman.
In the can.
Yes. Let us know what you think. Share this with your friends. Tell people about us. Yeah. Do all the things.
All the things.
All the things. All right. This is it.
All right.
I'm Justine.
I'm Gray.
And this is Unknowable.